Hi everyone, I'm Michael with Bad Goblin Games. In this video, we'll start looking at some of the game mechanics in Fire and Bronze, starting with the turn sequence, as well as the activation system and the actions available to your units. A quick disclaimer, these videos are temporary for two reasons. The first is that you may see some unpainted miniatures and terrain, which is not great for presentation level. To this point, we've been using mostly unpainted miniatures, terrain, and in some cases, simple tokens to represent what we needed. The second reason is that Fire and Bronze is still being tested. This means there's a chance some rules and mechanics you see demonstrated may change. With that out of the way, let's get on to the good stuff. The turn sequence we use is straightforward. We begin with the generation of the activation dice pool. We then move on to carrying out individual unit actions, allowing units to move, attack, and so on. We then deal with the morale phase and then wrap up with the cleanup phase. We'll talk about each of those in detail now. Fire and Bronze uses an activation system. This means you'll need to roll to successfully activate a unit before it can take any actions. Though before we do any of that, we first need to generate the dice we'll use to activate units. We refer to those dice as the activation dice pool. Your activation dice pool is 2d10s plus 1d10 per unit you have in play. So if you have 5 units in play, then your activation dice pool is 7d10. If you have 8 units in play, your activation dice pool is 10d10. You can use dice to keep track of your pool, though we recommend tokens or basically anything other than d10s. If you use d10s, you'll almost certainly accidentally use them for something else in the game. With the activation pools generated, you'll then move on to the meat of the turn sequence in which your units carry out their actions. To kick off the actions phase, we first determine which player activates first. Each player rolls 2d10 in secret. You'll then select one of those dice to be your initiative for the turn. The player that selects the lowest number will activate first, while the other player gets to add an additional d10 to their activation pool. So the decision point here is whether going first or gaining that extra activation die is more important to you. Let's walk through a quick example of initiative. We have 2 sets of dice rolled here. The blue dice represent player 1, and player 1 has rolled a 6 and a 1. The green dice represent player 2, and player 2 has rolled an 8 and a 3. Again, these dice are going to be rolled in secret, so each player won't see what the other has rolled. So player 1 is going to secretly select either the 1 or the 6. Player 2 is going to secretly select either the 3 or the 8. When they've both selected, they're going to reveal their numbers, and whoever has selected the lowest number will go first, while the player who has selected the highest number will get an extra activation token. The first player then selects a unit to activate. Every unit has an activation attribute. The higher the number, the more likely the unit will activate. You'll use dice from your activation dice pool to attempt the activation. You can select up to 3 dice from your pool. The more dice you allocate, the more likely the unit will activate. Though keep in mind, the activation dice pool d10s are one use only. So if you use too many too early in the turn, you may not have enough left to carry out activations for all of your units. If successfully activated, a unit can take 2 actions. If not successfully activated, they can only take 1 action, and after that action is carried out, control passes off to the other player. All right, let's complete this example using these warriors. Let's say they're running across the field, though they're really exposed, and there's a unit of enemy archers not too far away taking aim at these warriors. So these warriors need to get to some cover. And let's just say there's a mud brick wall not too far away. So their goal is to get to that mud brick wall. And I really need them to get there because I don't want them to get shot up. So I'm probably going to use more than 1 dice. So I may use 2. And I could use 3. But I also need to look at how many dice I have left in my activation pool, because remember, these are one use only, and I also have to consider what else I need to do. So I'm not going to use 3, but I'm going to use 2 because it is important, but I have to be kind of economical with my dice. So I'm going to roll 2 dice, and I need at least one of these to be a 6 or less for this unit to successfully activate. Okay, I got a 7 and a 3. So the 7 obviously wasn't a success, but the 3 was, and that's all they needed was one of them. With that being the case, since they passed, they can take 2 actions, which would probably be 2 runs, or 2 moves rather, and I'll talk about that in a bit more in a moment. If I had failed, say I had rolled a 7 and a 9, they would still get an action, but they would only get 1 action, which may not be enough to get them into cover. Now let's talk about the actions available. The actions are simple. You can move, attack, or aim. Move is used to move a unit from one point to another. Attack is used to attack with a hand weapon or a ranged weapon. Aim is used to gain a bonus with a ranged attack. A unit taking 2 actions can combine those 2 actions in numerous ways, though you cannot take 2 attack actions. Let's take a look at a few examples of units taking 2 actions. And we're going to use this unit of Egyptian warriors and this unit of Sea People's archers in our examples. So starting with the archers, they could take a move and then make a ranged attack with their bows. I would do this if I need to move within a certain range prior to attacking, or maybe in this case, I wanted to move back a little bit to maybe get out of charge range of these warriors. But regardless, I could move backwards, move forward, and then make a ranged attack. If the archers liked where they were, they could take an aim action and then make a ranged attack. The aim action will give the archers a bonus to their subsequent attack. The archers could move. They could move forward a little bit. They could move back a little bit and then take an aim action. The warriors could do 2 moves to charge in to the archers. This would get them into hand-to-hand combat. A unit that moves twice is running. An important point here is that the aim action and a unit that runs will carry over to the next turn. Lastly, you have the option of attempting to chain unit activations. This allows you to activate multiple units in sequence to pull off a large maneuver. You can attempt to activate another unit provided your previous activation was successful. The next unit you want to activate must also be within 10 inches of the unit that just finished its activation. Let's look at an example. I have a unit of Egyptian archers. They successfully activated and took 2 actions. They aimed and then attacked with their bows against this unit of enemy warriors. Meanwhile, a friendly unit of warriors is 5 inches away, while a friendly chariot is 11 inches away. As the archers were successfully activated and the warriors are within 10 inches of the archers, I can attempt to activate the warriors. I cannot attempt to activate the chariot as it's too far away. What this means during gameplay is you must put some thought into the order in which you will activate your units. Chaining activations is important for several reasons, including if you need one unit to support another, or if you need an entire flank to make a grand advance. The next phase in the turn is the morale phase. Here we check for any broken units. A unit is broken if it is at half of its starting strength. For example, a unit of warriors that begins the game with 6 models is broken when reduced to 3 or fewer. Broken units must make a check by rolling 1d10 per model left in the unit. Each roll that is a 5 or less is a success. You need at least 3 successes to be completely unaffected. If the roll results in 0 successes, the unit is removed from the game. Broken units are broken for the remainder of the game, and so you'll be making this check every turn unless you can raise the unit's strength by attaching a hero. Let's walk through an example using our warriors. So again, they started the game with 6 models in play. They've lost 3 during the course of the action, and so they are now broken. Once we reach the morale phase, we're going to see what happens to them. Since they have 3 models in play, they're going to roll 3 dice. So I'm going to roll, Again, I'm looking for a 5 or less. I need at least 1. In this case, I have 2. So in this case, the unit is still affected. If you have 1 or 2 successes, there's some effects, but the unit remains in the game. If I had 3 successes, let's just say I roll a 4, a 5, and a 5, the unit is completely unaffected. Now let's say none of the rolls were a success, and here I rolled a 7, 8, or 9. With no successes, the unit is just picked up from the table. The turn wraps up with the cleanup phase. At this point, we remove any activation tokens from the table if you are using those to keep track of activated units. This is also when we determine if any player has fulfilled the victory goals of the scenario being played. That'll wrap up this video. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe, comment below with your thoughts, and check out other videos in this series. Thank you.